Alcaraz badly wanted to win, wanted to come out and penetrate the court enough, and he has that kind of confidence in his game.
In early 2026, during the Qatar ExxonMobil Open in Doha, Alcaraz produced a performance that left the broadcast team visibly searching for adequate language. His movement patterns and shot construction across that tournament drew immediate attention from analysts who cover the ATP Tour professionally. Not fans with cameras in the stands, but people whose careers are built on sober, evidence-based assessment of elite athletic performance. What they said was striking enough to reignite a conversation the sport had been quietly building toward for 2 years.
The youngest career Grand Slam winner of all time.
Go back to the 2024 Roland Garros final. Analysts reviewing the match statistics afterward noted shot trajectories, recovery windows, and reaction speeds that placed Alcaraz at the extreme upper boundary of what ATP professionals typically produce under final stage match conditions. Then rewind further to his 2023 Wimbledon final against Djokovic, a 20-year-old in a fifth set against arguably the greatest mind the game has ever produced, and Alcaraz looked calmer. This isn't a highlight reel argument. This is a documented pattern that the sport's most credible voices are now openly admitting. Alcaraz is beyond human, and what he is doing genuinely defies all logic. If this kind of deep dive content is what you live for, hit that subscribe button. We go further than anyone else does. Now let's break down exactly why even the experts can't explain him anymore. To understand why credible tennis voices are reaching for language that borders on the supernatural, you first need to understand the context surrounding Carlos Alcaraz right now in 2026. This isn't the first time a young player has burst onto the ATP Tour with extraordinary results. The sport has seen prodigies before. It has seen generational talents. It has watched Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal redefine ceilings across 3 separate decades. But even within that extraordinary historical company, Alcaraz is producing a case study that analysts genuinely cannot slot into existing frameworks. The conversation intensified notably after his performance at the Qatar ExxonMobil Open in Doha in early 2026. The way he moved, not just his footwork, but his directional change under full sprint, his ability to reset body position mid-rally without mechanical breakdown, caught the attention of analysts who study athletic movement professionally. His between-point physical recovery rate and shot consistency under late-match fatigue don't fit the expected human performance curve for a professional tennis player, regardless of age. That single observation opened a much larger conversation, one that deserves serious, structured examination rather than the usual 30-second highlight clip with background music. Because what Doha revealed wasn't just good tennis. It was the latest data point in an argument that is becoming impossible to dismiss. Alcaraz is operating beyond the boundaries of what this sport has historically considered human. Carlos Alcaraz stands 6 feet 1 inch tall and carries a muscular, athletic frame that is heavier than the typical ATP baseline player. Historically, that physical build has come with trade-offs: reduced agility, slower lateral movement, compromised sprint recovery during extended baseline exchanges. These are well-documented physiological patterns observed across professional tennis for decades. Alcaraz doesn't follow them. His court coverage speed has been measured in multiple tournaments as elite, not elite relative to his size, but elite against the full professional field, including players who are significantly lighter and built specifically for movement. His first step reaction time, which is the interval between reading a shot and initiating movement, has drawn specific attention from coaches and biomechanics specialists who work within the ATP ecosystem. Numbers in this category are not published publicly by the ATP, but multiple coaching analysts with access to tracking data have commented publicly that his metrics sit in a category occupied by very few active professionals. Then there is the forehand. Alcaraz's forehand topspin generation has been cited alongside Rafael Nadal's as among the heaviest in professional tennis history. This is not a casual comparison. Nadal's forehand, specifically the RPM figures it generated and the physical stress it placed on opponents forced to handle it above shoulder height, is widely considered one of the most destructive singular weapons the sport has ever produced. The fact that a player operating on faster surfaces, with a more versatile tactical game, is producing topspin construction in that same elite historical conversation is genuinely significant. It tells you something specific and measurable. His wrist mechanics, racket head acceleration, and contact point control are operating at a level that belongs in a very short historical list. By the time Carlos Alcaraz won the 2024 Roland Garros title, he had achieved something no player in the Open era had managed before reaching his age. 4 Grand Slam titles spanning 3 different surfaces, hard courts at the 2022 US Open, grass at Wimbledon in 2023 and 2024, and clay at Roland Garros in 2024 before turning 22. That places him in historically uncharted territory for the pace of multi-surface Grand Slam accumulation, a distinction that holds even when measured against the greatest names in the sport's history. To appreciate the weight of that, consider what it required. Winning on hard courts demands a specific kind of aggressive, high-variance tennis where raw power and serve dominance are major factors. Winning on grass, particularly at Wimbledon, requires low ball handling, serve and volley confidence, and the ability to generate aggression on a surface that offers almost no margin for error during long rallies. Winning on clay demands physical endurance, topspin construction, and a tolerance for extended point patterns that can last 30 shots or more. These are not overlapping skill sets. The greatest players in history have frequently dominated one or two surfaces, while finding the third either elusive or manageable at best. Federer won his only Roland Garros title in 2009, a year Nadal withdrew before the tournament began due to tendinitis in both knees, after spending years unable to overcome Nadal's dominance on clay. Djokovic's clay record, while historically excellent, took years to develop into a consistent Grand Slam winning formula. Nadal played Wimbledon with a fundamentally different tactical approach than the one he used on clay, and it was visibly a compromise. Alcaraz hasn't compromised. His game at Roland Garros 2024 looked organic, not adapted. His game at Wimbledon didn't look like a clay court player trying to survive on grass. The transition between surfaces appeared almost effortless in a way that contradicts what professional tennis, coaching theory tells us should be happening. That is not a tennis story anymore. That is a logic problem the sport has no clean answer for. Mats Wilander is not a commentator who chases headlines. A 7-time Grand Slam champion and former world number 1, Wilander has spent his post-playing career as a deeply analytical voice on Eurosport, building a reputation for measured and often contrarian assessments. When he stated publicly that Alcaraz is a stronger overall player than Jannik Sinner, despite Sinner holding the world number 1 ranking through much of 2024 and into 2025, it landed differently than the same claim would from a former player with a looser connection to the current game. Wilander's argument wasn't built on sentiment, it was built on the observation that Alcaraz's ceiling, the upper range of what he is capable of producing in a single match, exceeds what Sinner can access at his own peak. Rankings measure consistency over time. Wilander was making a different, and more specific point that when Alcaraz is at the absolute top of his game, the tennis he produces is beyond what the ranking system is designed to capture. Boris Becker has publicly commented on Alcaraz's complete game, noting that the combination of his attacking capability and defensive coverage creates a tactical challenge for opponents that few players in the current era present simultaneously. John McEnroe, not a commentator known for unqualified praise, noted publicly that Alcaraz's composure in the deciding set of the 2023 Wimbledon final was exceptional for a player at his stage of development, a comment that aligns with broader expert observation about his psychological profile. These aren't fan accounts, these are people with a direct personal understanding of what elite Grand Slam tennis demands mentally and physically. Their convergence on the same broad conclusion that Alcaraz is operating at a level that defies standard categorization, carries significant weight. Physical gifts can be measured, statistical outputs can be analyzed, but the aspect of Alcaraz's game that most consistently leaves experts at a loss is something harder to quantify: his psychological profile under maximum pressure. During his 2023 Wimbledon final against Novak Djokovic, A man with 24 Grand Slam titles and arguably the most pressure-resistant competitive mind in the sport's history, Alcaraz faced multiple momentum shifts across 5 sets. In the 4th set, Djokovic leveled the match at 2 sets apiece, taking the set in a manner that has historically broken younger players attempting to close out major finals. The crowd tension, the Djokovic aura, the weight of what was at stake. And yet his body language didn't fracture. His shot selection didn't become conservative or erratic. He walked into the 5th set with observable calm. Sports psychologists who analyzed that match afterward pointed to the gap between expected emotional response and actual emotional response as a data point outside the normal range for a player at his stage of career development. The psychological resilience he displayed was described not as a product of naivety or inexperience, but as a sophisticated and active management of internal state, something most players only develop after years of losing major finals first. Throughout his professional career, Alcaraz has maintained a notably disciplined on-court record compared to his peers, widely recognized for avoiding racket abuse, keeping composure with officials, and displaying minimal visible frustration during momentum shifts. In an era where even the most decorated players regularly receive code violations, that behavioral consistency stands as a documented and verifiable outlier. So here is where everything lands. Carlos Alcaraz is 22 years old, turning 23 in May 2026. He has 4 Grand Slam titles on 3 surfaces. He has a physical profile that contradicts biomechanical expectations. He has a psychological profile that contradicts developmental expectations. He has shot quality metrics that specialists place in the same historical conversation as Nadal and Federer. And the most credible analytical voices in the sport, not casual commentators, not fans, are openly admitting that the frameworks they built to evaluate elite tennis simply do not account for what he is producing. Tennis experts don't admit things like that without a significant body of evidence forcing them there. The label "beyond human" is dramatic, but at this point the documentation behind it is not. What Alcaraz is doing right now at this age against this generation of competition in this era of the sport, it genuinely defies all logic. And the more closely you examine the evidence, the harder it becomes to argue otherwise. If this breakdown gave you a perspective you haven't encountered before, subscribe to this channel right now. We cover tennis at a depth that mainstream sports media doesn't get close to. Every week, we go further into the data, the expert commentary, and the historical context that turns a highlight reel into an actual argument. Hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop your take in the comments below. Do you think Alcaraz has already secured his place as the greatest talent the sport has ever produced? Or is there still a case to be made against it? Let's hear it.